Okay. So I'm doing that now. It's connecting. Then we'll take this
We're live.
Okay, is it live now?
Yes, live on YouTube.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So Abby, over to you. The introductions, and once you're done with reading a bio, you can pass the baton to me.
Okay, great. Chinwe is with us today, and I am so looking forward to this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Abiola Abiodun, and I'm the co-host for today's program. And today we have with us Chinwe Odigboegwu. I call her Chinwe. She's fondly called Mrs. O. And she is currently the legal director of Guinness Nigeria PLC, Diageo, having been promoted from her role as senior commercial legal manager. Chinwe is a natural teacher, renowned for her ability to communicate with people of various ages, cultures, and educational backgrounds. Her adult teaching days date back to 2004, when she lectured adult federal government workers on 2 courses, business law and the law and practice of meetings at the Federal Training Center, Maiduguri, during her 1-year compulsory National Youth Course service many years ago. Now she creates time to train mediators and mediation advocates as often as possible. An associate fellow of the Nigeria Leadership Initiative, as well as a mentor and an associate of women in business and public service, WIMBIZ. Chinwe is very active in leadership, mentoring, and societal development. Chinwe recently authored a book on the recognition and enforcement of foreign arbitration awards. She is a recipient of prestigious awards, including ESQ, Nigerian Legal Awards, Top 40 Lawyers Under 40, and Coca-Cola Hellenic Extra Mile Lawyer Award. Chinwe is a member of the Nigeria Bar Association, the Panel of Neutrals of the Lagos Court of Arbitration, LCA, the Panel of Neutrals, and Training Faculty of the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse. She's also a member of the panel. She's also a member of the faculty of the Negotiation and Conflict Management Group, NCMG, and a standing conference and a trainer with the Standing Conference of Mediation Advocates, SCMA. Okay. Over to you. We are so glad to have Mrs. O here.
Yeah, we're so glad to have Mrs. O here, and I must add that a lot of what we know, today, especially for myself, I learned it from Mrs. O. She taught me mediation. She taught me mediation advocacy skills. So it's truly an honor having my teacher here on board today, Mrs. O. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you, Fola. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just get right into it. I always start off by saying that the journey is as important as the destination. So in your case, you wear I think 4 hats, but I'm only going to focus on 3. The first hat as you being an attorney mediator, the second hat as you being a mediation advocate, and the third as you being a facilitator stroke trainer. So can you please tell us about your journey into mediation and how you found yourself as a trainer teaching mediation? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Fola, and hello, everyone. Happy Democracy Day, whatever that means to us Nigerians. No,
I like that.
Some people be so happy Democracy because it's Democracy Day. I believe in Nigeria. Nigeria will be great. And welcome to all those joining us from outside Nigeria. If you're in Nigeria, I hope you're keeping safe. Whether COVID or security issues, may God help us all. But that's your question. So I got called to bar in 2004, right? And that particular year, one of our lecturers, she's currently a judge, Justice Rolly Harriman.
She's here with us.
She's with us here.
She's here with us. Justice Harriman is here with us. Yes. Yeah, she's here with us.
That was my first introduction to ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. So that was not, of course, it was not a course in law school then. So I was in Lagos campus 2004. Yeah, 2003 into 2004. Now she had just done a training in ADR. I think she was one of the first set of CEDR accredited mediators, but she now came to law school and, She didn't owe us that information, but she told us about ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, and it's founded so fascinating. Why? We've done 5 years in university, and of course, extra time due to strikes and other things. And all we knew was, the different, very traditional legal practice and all. So she introduced us to ADR, and after law school, there was a training. I can't remember how much it was then, but coming out of law school, it wasn't so expensive. But a lot of people were like, oh, please, after these exams, let them go and rest, let them go and do this. So I said, I must do this course. So I did that introduction to ADR, and there was an exam or an assessment, got that. Then NCMG organized another one, foundation in ADR, then advanced ADR. So I was doing all those courses. I now went for NYSC. That's when I did the lecturing at the Federal Training Center. Came back and joined Banwa Nigodalo. Now, at that time, I remember 2006, CEDR accreditation was almost =500,000 naira. But on my CV, I already had ADR interest. I wrote that I'd done 1 or 2 trainings. So when the NCMG wrote to BNI then, so I'm really grateful to BNI for the CEDR training, because honestly, it was sponsored by BNI at the time. How much was my salary and how much could I earn? So you can imagine I was very vocal about, and I put in my CV, now got me selected for the CEDR accreditation training. So CEDR is the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution in the UK. So I did the CEDR accreditation training. And of course, those that have done the training know that it's very intensive, 5 days, and there's an assessment. So then, everybody was apprehensive, because it was like, you spend that kind of money, if you don't go through with the assessment and you don't come out on top, you won't get accredited. It's not about just paying and getting a certificate. So that was my introduction to ADR from when Justice Rolly Harriman. Oh, Justice Harriman sent something in the chat. Thank you, ma'am. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much. So my opportunity is to say thank you. I've not seen her for a long time. So thank you, ma'am. And from that introduction, the way she talked about it, I picked interest, went for the trainings, pick more interest. I think I met Mrs. Yinka Kolade, Mrs. Fumi Roberts, and they took interest in me at that time. Okay, so the NCMG and then Mr. Kenya, So somehow with the exams and everything, I did the CEDR training, got accredited in 2006. And then, we now, NCMG now set up the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse, right? Then some CEDR accredited mediators were there, just a few mediators at the time. But what I did extra was that I was working in a busy law firm, but the passion for ADR, got me to go to the multi-door courthouse as often as I could in my spare time. And anytime there was a training or an opportunity, I'd volunteer. And then Mrs. Roberts used to run the Dispute Resolution International, like a training, set up at the time. And when she was designing her courses, she asked me, oh, can you say, yeah, why not? And that's how I started drafting role play. So volunteering was what got me, working with these very senior mediators and all. And that's how my career in mediation started, And so when we had the first legal settlements week, I think it was 2009, we started doing the mediations, and the rest is history. So that's the shortest version of my story in ADR and mediation.
Interesting. So, Mrs. O, now we're just going to get right into it, more like hitting the ground running. Now, as a trainer, can we talk about your observations about the growth of mediation? Now, why do you think mediation, for want of a better way to put it, is still struggling with other forms of alternative dispute resolution as compared to litigation, as compared to arbitration, despite the numerous benefits ascribed to mediation? Why do you think that is so?
Okay, so it's amazing how those of us that know the benefits of mediation wonder why, even after all the awareness, people don't do it. There are many reasons, okay? So I remember when we used to be someone came up with the meaning of AD, another, it says that lawyer CEDR is not alternative distribution. It's alarming drop in revenue. So there's this is what I know. This is how I make my money. I'm not going to recommend to my clients something that I think I cannot earn from. So there's a selfish, a bit of ignorance around a few lawyers, additional lawyers who want to embrace mediation. There's also the angle of mediation is not binding.
I'm sorry, Mrs. O, can you please pause right there? Can you hear me?
I know that. It's voluntary. It's not binding. So for a lot of
I'm sorry. You see what you just said now? The misconceived notion of the non-bindingness of mediation. Please, do you know who said that thing? I'm looking for that person. So
before Chinwe answers that, can I just interject? I think
it's the definition of mediation. And it gives people the understanding that, look, you come into a mediation session, you are not tied by whatever is tied to confidentiality, and that's the truth. So when they say non-binding, and I said until it is settled. So you go to a mediation session, if you don't have a settlement agreement, you're actually not bound by anything that happened there. A mediator cannot be called to court to give evidence on any discussions. Even the parties cannot be put in a witness what happened at mediation. That's the truth. So it goes on up until there's a settlement agreement that becomes binding. And it actually is a good way of getting people comfortable with mediation. You know, that mediation, so even if it's a court-ordered mediation, for instance, right? You go there, you sign your submission form and all that. You participate in the process. If in the end, parties don't settle, there's nothing binding about that process. So I understand your concern as to the effectiveness. So the non-bindingness of mediation does not affect effectiveness of mediation. So that's another that people feel, oh, even if I want to settle, I cannot vouch for the goodwill of the other party. It's a waste of time. Come to a process where it might not end up in a resolution, but the folly of that kind of mindset. You forgot 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. You can tell if mediation makes sense. So why would you rather go to a court, it's adjourned for another 2 months, adjourned for another 3 months, and maybe 12, right? People might think I'm exaggerating. Those of us who practice, instead of going to mediation that within an hour, 2 hours, you may settle. It may be moved to another session, and in the end, you're not wasting time. Okay, so that's the second. That's the revenue part tied to competence of the lawyer. No, that one is the presumption that it's a waste of time because you feel that maybe your case is not suitable for mediation or the other party wants to put forth the settlement. Another reason is just a mindset traditional reason. This is what we know. Whoever came up with this ADR, you know, some people actually think that ADR is foreign. It's when you do the mediation training and they tell you through the history of mediation in Nigeria, you see that dispute resolution is not a foreign methodology. When you go to your village, for those of us that go there at all, the traditional rulers, when they sit to settle disputes, even from the days of the Bible, so Justice Oke, retired, will tell you, I mean, there's a scripture she would quote. I'm not trying to preach, I'm just saying that in the Bible, there's a part of the Bible that talks about how someone was advised to go quickly to settle with your adversary before your adversary takes you to court. Something like that. I'm sure if you check the Quran, you might see something similar there, you know. So it's there, it's been there from the beginning that, you know, even in family, the go-to person is to settle an issue. So in this book, Getting to Yes, one book that is referred to in our mediation training, they'll tell you about the dispute of the orange, where a mother had to settle the dispute between two of her children. What was the issue? There was just one more orange in the fridge, and both of them wanted the orange. And so she found her children struggling. Give me the orange, give me the orange. You would say, okay, let's give the youngest person, the younger one, the orange here. That's a way to settle. That's one way. But is that win-win? Is not. Is win-lose, right? Another person will say, oh, leave it to your elder sister, leave it to your elder brother. It's not win-win. But then this mother, applying the wisdom behind mediation, says to both of them, okay, what do you want from the orange? What do you want? And then one says, I want orange juice. Another one says, I want the pills to make cake. And she says, okay. And she says, okay, peel the orange. The person that wants to make cake, take the pills. So you're taking all the pills of a whole orange. The person that wants juice takes the whole orange for the juice. So in the end, they've gone to interest, right? And they settled it. That's how simple mediation is, if we look at it without being very technical. So another reason, like I said, is just that traditional belief that for a resolution, we need a judgment of high. So we just need some kind of judicial announcement. We need to analyze the issues. We need to argue as lawyers. Do you understand? There's the other reason of, there's some cases that cannot be settled by mediation, whether by law or by the nature of the case, okay? And like I said, land disputes, where there's an issue around declaration of title to land, really. I can settle in a mediation process. But guess what? If someone else with a higher title comes and goes to court for declaration of title to land, whatever I've done in mediation would be a failed process. So that's just one of the things. You cannot even also to land. You cannot, as a couple, say, oh, let's go and do mediation to sign divorce papers. You know, like some movies, even Nigerian movies, when they're talking about divorce, they'll sign the papers, sign the papers. I always laugh, really, where they sign papers under Nigerian law. So those are just a few of the reasons that some people just have this fixed mindset, blocked mind, because you don't know. You'd rather just in your safe zone. I don't know about mediation. I don't know if it works. So let me just go ahead to court. And then this thing about alarming drop in revenue. Those of us that have done the mediation course or the mediation advocacy course, when we talk about how to build clients for mediation advocacy, we know that a traditional way of doing clients with mediation. So let me just put the thought there and move on with the conversation.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Abby. You were going to say something. Do you want to? Can you still remember? Or should I still continue?
No, I was actually going to say the concept of the non-binding nature of mediation. I think that does a lot of disservice to the methodology of mediation. It's non-binding until you sign. And even though it's non-binding, what I found over time is that it gives clarity. So maybe somehow it's possible for us to, I don't know if it's to remove or to rephrase.
I think
because even if mediation is not, parties don't resolve, there's the aspect of parties are leaving the table with the clearer view,
understanding,
or clearer, exactly, perspectives of where they were, where they're going. That's just what I wanted to add.
Yeah, and before I take Mrs. O's reaction to this, I think, I don't know, but I think the intendment of those that might have put in that word non-binding, I'm sure has already been changed, because rather than it being a shield now, it is more or less looking like a sword, because that is what they're just trying to pick up and then give a subjective interpretation. So, but I wouldn't want us to dwell on this. I'll now go still within the framework of non-binding, Mrs. O. I would like to hear what your thoughts are on mandatory mediation. Vis-a-vis using that as a way of hastening the growth of mediation. So I'll lay a premise for this before I pass the baton to you. Now, a lot of the cases I've had to handle, I've noticed that, especially with the parties, that especially the court-referred cases, most of them find out about the benefits of mediation when they're at the mediation table. But the conversations they have with their lawyers and all that does not really shed that clarity as far as mediation is concerned. So some schools of thought believe that parties should be forced to the mediation table, and the decision of whether the case will be settled or not can now be left to them. So what are your thoughts really on mandatory mediation?
Okay, so to answer the question, I'm going to rewind to, I think 2004, was it 2004? The new High Court rules that brought in the ADR protocol. I think it was 2004. You know, so when the multi-door courthouse was created and the rules of court, the court has multiple doors. There's the litigation, arbitration, mediation, examination, and all that. So one of my colleagues was saying, this is unconstitutional, you know. I mean, that the Constitution talks about access to justice, and access to justice as defined before the Lagos State High Court system brought in mediation as part of the justice system was the courts. So the Constitution, I don't know, we can check again. I don't recall that the Constitution says nobody should be denied access to a judge or access to a courtroom. It's access to justice. So if the justice system says, when you bring a case, it will be screened, and if it is seen to be suitable for alternative dispute resolution, it will be screened to the ADR track and sent to Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse or any other. And when I say Lagos, I'm just giving an example because, of course, in Nigeria and other countries, we have different ADR institutions. So mandatory mediation, actually, as it is a directive of the court for an ADR institution to explore mediation. It is not a directive to forcefully settle by mediation. Otherwise, the court would just strike out the case and send it there, right? But what does the court do? The court stays proceedings, right? And adjourns it to a long date, right? For feedback on whether the mediation process works. That alone should let any lawyer know that the judge is not saying you must settle by mediation. The judge is saying this case has been reviewed and ideally it can be settled, right? So it's a mandate to go and explore mediation. So by going to the multi-door courthouse or anywhere else, you have obeyed the order. Now you get to the multi-door courthouse, the case manager gives you something called a submission form, a confidentiality form to sign to say, I hereby submit to mediation. I'm aware of a few cases where it's a court-ordered mediation. The parties get those forms and they refuse to sign them. They wait for a few months, then they go back to court and they say they couldn't go to mediation. I haven't seen where a judge will say, oh, you pay damages for not going to mediation. I haven't seen, you know. So I agree that sometimes you need to let people know that within this justice system, this is the suitable option for you. And it's only you that can determine if it's not suitable, but at least try. You have to try before you determine that it's not a suitable option. So I don't see anything wrong with mandatory mediation. And I would say court-ordered mediation. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's a really good one. And it's really helped people. So you will find that, you know, I remember there's some cases I've mediated, you know, people come in, the parties come in, the lawyers come in, they're like, we came because they come. We came, right? And then you start, they settle, and they're looking at you like, what magic did you perform? Has it happened to you for that? People come into mediation with different mindset. By the time they're signing a settlement agreement, they're looking at the mediator like, oh, should we bow down and worship you? Because they can't believe how it's gone through. And the side for lawyers, if you've not settled how your clients will pay you, is that by the time that process is over, the client is wondering that this money that this lawyer said I should pay for this case, should I really be paying that much? Because this mediation just happened within 3 hours, 4 hours. That's the problem. So lawyers in the house, eh? Okay, I think that's part of the another I don't need to.
Okay. Now, it's funny. Abby, do you have anything to ask, please? I want to move into a very special session.
Yeah,
I like to.
I was just going to say that I think that's actually one of the reasons why mediation isn't embraced by lawyers, because they come in, we mediate or we facilitate, and it's like, poof, it's disappeared. The matter is settled, and like it seems like it's seamless. And for them, what am I saying them? Like I'm not one of, well,
the way things are, I think there needs to be a distinction between a lawyer and a mediator. So I think
yeah,
the word
okay,
is
so
another.
for the adversarial lawyers.
Some of us are still
the word there is still another because
there should be no courts.
No, that's not where I'm going. But I think the seeming simplicity, and the demystification of the whole litigation process and getting to that solution in such an speedy, effective manner just makes the parties like, so what, as you said earlier, why am I paying so much? Why am I paying my lawyer so much if I can get it done this way? So that in itself is one of the problems, I think lawyers have with the process of mediation.
Yeah, Abby, so what you described is from a mediator's point of view or the party's point of view, that it just looks like it's seamless. But of course, that as a mediator, the intellectual work you do, that happen is a lot, right? A lot of behind the scenes work. For a mediation advocate, it's the same thing. The kind of study you have to do, study the other side, study the dynamics, decide your negotiation strategy, right, with your clients, the pre-mediation advisory. That's what the lawyers who understand work. And if you don't get your clients involved in all that work, then that's when the client will say, what am I paying for, right? But if you take the client through the whole education about mediation, this is how we're going to analyze this case. These are your key interests from this matter beyond the pleadings, right? This is your objective. This is what you want out of the process. And this is how we should present it or negotiate at mediation. By the time you carry a client through that, they see all the work that's gone into it. And really, we're not trying to diminish the importance of litigation and what goes on in litigation, because really, litigation requires a lot of skill, advocacy, and all that, written, oral, everything, and knowledge of the law. And so litigation has it. And for us who, advocate for mediation, I also would advocate for litigation in some matters, right? And I know that I've mediated some very complicated mediation. Those kind of cases that you have to do up to 6 sessions before they can settle, because there's some complexities involved. Even as counsel in the law firm, I've been part of a mediation process that took, I can't remember how many months. It wasn't up to a year, but it wasn't less than 4 months and quite a number of sessions, because it had to do with some construction. There were technicalities around, foundation, engineering stuff and all. So, those kind of mediation cases don't look seamless, and everybody would know why they're not seamless, right? So there are different kinds of cases. There's some of the complexities. And I agree with you, Abby, that, that the way mediation just comes and settles things, no matter how complicated the case is, mediation will always simplify it more than litigation would, okay? Because I would rather prepare a client for mediation than for litigation. Because how do you prepare for cross-examination? All you can do is just try and envisage what kind of questions the other lawyer will come in cross-examination. You cannot, by any spiritual or intellectual means, know all the questions that will come at your client under cross-examination. And guess what? When your client tries to get your have you seen it in court before, where the client is in the witness box and then they're asking the question, the person is going looking towards the lawyer. The other counsel will say, face the judge, face the judge. So there's nothing you can do for a client that is in witness box. But in mediation, you can sit beside your client, you can you can write, you can take a break, have a conversation. So honestly, mediation is definitely better. Quite a number of cases, really.
Thank you for that, Chinwe.
Okay, may I, Abby?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving on to the next session. I like to call this the table breaking moment, where Abby I would just come up with a particular thought on something which is not in form of a question. I would like to hear what your reaction would be on it. It might just be a bit unconventional.
You did not prepare for this table breaking.
No, it might be a bit unconventional, but trust me, Mrs. O, I know you're up to it. Now, I'm going to lay a premise for my thoughts on this next line I'm going to say. There's a reason why in the UK, you don't have a lawyer being a solicitor and an advocate at the same time. Now, what is unwritten is the mindset ascribed to being a solicitor and a mindset ascribed to being an advocate. Aside from that one is unspoken. Now, bringing that home to the concept of mediation, I hold this very strong belief, and I stand to be corrected based on experience, that where ADR is concerned, I don't think you can have two masters, be a very good mediator and be a very good arbiter at the same time. I believe that there's a mindset ascribed to mediation, there's a mindset ascribed to arbitration. I also believe that when push comes to shove, the real you comes out in play, whether we like it or not. Because I've had cases handled by mediators that are core mediators, that when the case became very, very complex, the mediation skills in them naturally just came to fore. And I've also had some very complex cases handled by core arbitrators and mediators that when it got to that stage, they did not see that arbitrator side of them coming into play. So bringing that question home, I'm not also trying not to go biblical. I don't believe that you can have two masters at the same time. So the question is this, two actually in one. Can you be a good arbitrator and a good mediator? That's the first one. The second one flowing from the first is that, do you believe in a system where we have mediators that are core mediators and they stick to the practice of mediation? They will also have some ADR professionals that are core arbitrators and stick to the angle of arbitration. So that if any case is not resolved at the mediation stage, it ends there. Then another professional now takes over as an arbitrator. Having an individual sit on the chair of being an arbitrator and a mediator at the same time, I sometimes feel there is always a conflict when push really, really comes to shove. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and before we move over to another table-shaking question. Thank you.
So for La, you're asking someone who is an arbitrator and a mediator at the same time.
At the same time.
Let us answer. Okay, so you have asked the question, and it can be looked at from two angles, right? Whether an individual, Chinwe Odigboegwu, would be an effective arbitrator and an effective mediator at the same time in her career life, right? The same way, some people feel if you're a litigator, stick to litigation. If you're an ADR practitioner, stick to ADR, right? But let's go back to the now, if you're saying whether it's okay for someone to build practice as both an arbitrator and as a mediator, for me, the answer is yes. Not just about multiple streams of income, about multiple opportunities for experience and all that. But if you're talking about what we call the blends in dispute resolution, where you say Med-Arb, right? So now the cases where a judge refers cases to mediation is called Med, litigation to mediation, litigation ends in mediation. So those blends that they talk about in ADR says there are some cases, and you find out where you have multi-tiered dispute resolution clauses in contracts that would say parties would do their best to negotiate. If they're not able to settle by negotiation amongst two senior persons in the organization, within 7 days, they go to mediation at so place. If mediation cannot bring a resolution within maybe 21 days, they go to arbitration. Now, when you have a contract like that, then you must follow that process. If your question is whether go to the multi-door courthouse, the multi-door courthouse says for arbitration, you should do mediation. Whether it is the same person who sits as mediator that should do the arbitration, I would say no. So if I'm assigned a case, right, as an arbitrator, right, and I look at the clause and I see that it's not yet right for arbitration, I'll send it back to the case manager to say, mediation first. Only if mediation doesn't work should come to arbitration. Now, they may give me the option of saying, why don't you take up the case as both mediator and arbitrator? I would refuse. I would decide if I want to just be the I would decide if I just want to be the mediator and end it and to speak to an arbitrator. Because really, no matter how skillful you are, I'm not sure that your brain can remember everything you've heard during mediation. And it's not just for cases. And no institution should encourage it, except the mediation started as a joint session. There was no private sessions, there was no caucus, no very sensitive confidential information came to the mediator. And at that joint session, the mediation, then and they both agreed to appoint the state. I would not even recommend the MEDARB process to be by the same neutral. I would say if it's a mediator, close that and then take it. But whether an individual can be both an arbitrator and a mediator at the same career, yes, and that's what I. But now I'm in-house, I'm not doing much of arbitration, but I don't see anything wrong with it. But because it has a way of balancing mindset and using capacity to a lot of. Yeah.
Okay then. Thank you so much. Abby,
so
do you have
start now or we're still shaking?
we're still shaking. We're going to shake till the end. But, the first part was just to warm up. Because you know how it is when you want to start. I can't have a Mrs. O on the hot seat and be asking her the conventional questions of what is mediation, features of mediation. We've already gone past that. We've already gone past that. So now the second issue now, which has to do with the training of mediation, has to do with the various styles of mediation, the evaluative, facilitative, and transformative, which I have a big problem with, but that's another symposium discussion entirely. Now, we now decide to now marry everything into the African concept of mediation. And I use the word African because there's no way, we cannot look at the concept of mediation holistically. Yes, I like to believe that we have the African brand of mediation, we have the European brand of mediation based on mindset, then the cultural differences, which is why I believe that a mediator should have cultural intelligence. I used a particular word when I was having a training. I said, for someone like Vikram, I'm on a first name basis with Vikram. If Vikram was on the other side as a party, he probably wouldn't have a problem with it. But here in Africa, I cannot call somebody of Vikram's age by name. If I start off, I've already lost that session. That's the moment I start going on, it's unwritten, but it's there.
Yeah.
Who is this young person? So those are the kind of cultural inferences I'm trying to make out now, which now leads to my question. If the essence of mediation is dispute resolution, where parties have to agree on what is amenable to both of them, why didn't you need a style? Why does a mediator? Because you see, this is really very important when you teach us. Why must I, at the back of my mind, think okay, fine, I should adopt a facilitative style of mediation when I know that it is an evaluative style that will pay? Why can't I just mediate on the strength of the case and not be boxed into the corner of either using a style in resolving a dispute? Don't you think that the fact that you teach us the styles of mediation causes more, it complicates issues? Because I do more of mediation advocacy than I do of mediator. So I know when a mediator is adopting a particular style. I see it there when the parties ask him a question, and the answer is there. Guide us to where we are going to. but you keep throwing the question back at us and telling us that, well, I'm not allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to say that. It's it can be a bit frustrating. And some cases I've had deadlocks because of issues like this. So, and I feel it boils down to the way they taught us mediation. So to now compartmentalize everything, the question is, do we really need styles when mediating?
Okay, do we really need styles when mediating? I would say it's the teaching, right, of style, various ways of flowing in mediation. And nobody says you must stick to one style, right? Nobody says you must stick to one style. And Fola, I think your question stems from both theory that you heard and what you have seen people do based on the theory they heard. So people have different levels of learning, agility, and the way they interpret knowledge. So let's just leave that one aside, right? I've just started the session that I've done. You probably haven't sat, so I can see Mrs. Yejide or Shuke here. You probably haven't sat in a mediation session with her. You probably haven't sat in a mediation session with most of the members of the faculty or the LMDC. So I'm not sure what mediation sessions you are referring to. And if you're referring to the mediation sessions that people do when we train them, the role plays and the assessment, you will see that people fresh from learning a few days before their assessment are trying to do everything they've been taught in the book. But in real life, right, you would flow different styles, right? I don't think you should sit in a mediation session and you should be able to tell what style somebody is using. But in terms of that aspect of a party asking a mediator a direct question, we kind of would want the mediator to give a recommendation on the way to implement. You know that we thought that in mediation, your role is to facilitate a resolution, right? You should not suggest to the parties. Let me give an example. I like to use landlord-tenant cases as examples. So a landlord says, this man should leave my house before the rent expired, tenancy agreement expired, he's still here, right? Get him out. Okay? And the man says, I'm looking for another household. Will you now, as a mediator, say, okay, give a specific date when you want to leave, right? You would hardly push another party to give that kind of answer because you want to remain neutral. You don't want to be seen as biased, right? Or pushing for another person's case. Some countries will tell you that conciliation must be an automatic part of mediation, where the practical way is to suggest some things, because some parties are not just very creative in resolution styles, right? So there's the traditional mediation that tells you don't suggest and all that. The facilitative thing, and we always talk about this questioning skills. A very skilled mediator can actually use questioning to get the parties to say what needs to be said without being the one to say it. And it takes a lot of experience and practice to get that done. So I don't think anybody should be tied to a particular style. I think that styles can flow according to the cases. Fola, you're a very practical person, and for you, why are we doing book knowledge and trying to practice book knowledge when we can see how to move this thing forward and get to a resolution, right? So there's that aspect of practicality and what's workable. But the thing is, there's a thin line between being practical, moving things forward in a mediation, and being seen as biased or partial. It's a very thin, because once you get to the point where you want to slice something, automatically one party is saying you're asking this question to move the case of another party. So it's within that boundary of remaining neutral and impartial throughout the mediation that you'd find a mediator trying to restrain himself or herself from doing those direct things that you think are I don't know if this fully answers your question, but that's the way I'm thinking.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But it's just that I'm going to pass the mic to Abby. We have so many questions and comments. But before that, it just raises a delicate balance of some sort between what you just said on workability, practicality, and a bit of an understanding based on where the parties are coming from. And I'll just leave, this is what I mean. People are being used to being told what to do from the litigation angle, where they believe that there's a decision, there is a judge that is saying, do this. So they struggle with the fact that now, aside from the fact that mediation is even party driven, you are telling me now that, look, to come and to assist myself in taking a decision. There's that confusion there that, okay, so sometimes the helplessness is there when you know that they are, but because you don't want to breach the mediator, you don't want to breach that level of professionalism, you now have to keep, it's as if you are telling them, okay, fine, it's a party-driven process. So it's just that delicate balance of in a way assisting parties without breaking the rules of professionalism. That is just the part that I kind of struggle with. So I don't know whether you really want to speak on that bit before Abby takes over.
Yeah, so that gap, the gap you are describing most times is when the parties don't have a mediation advocate.
Yes,
so,
no mediation advocate at all, just
mediation
parties alone.
No,
yeah.
Exactly. So when parties are alone, like I said, the questioning. If you give me an example of a case that people are stuck, and I can just tell you 2-3 questions that can move them away from that stuck part. If you build a scenario, I can tell you, and it's not because I know it all, but I know the power of questioning in mediation. The power of questioning in mediation, that people out of this house end of June. In a private meeting, he has told the mediator, the 500,000 this guy is owing me, I can as well forfeit it, but I'm not ready to tell him until he says he's committed to leave end of June, right? Then in the other private room, the tenant is saying, I am ready to leave this end of June because I found a house. So this man's rent is 500,000. The place I found is 750,000. If I pay him 500,000, I don't even have enough money to pay for that place. If he can forfeit 200,000, I give him 300,000. I add to the money. Are you seeing how numbers are coming up in different rooms? But now the mediator, because of confidentiality, the landlord says to him, don't tell him I'm ready to forfeit this money. The other guy says, don't tell him that I can actually pay this amount and I'm ready to move end of the month. So what does the mediator do? He goes to be heading towards a deadlock here, right? This information you gave me is confidential. I will not disclose unless you say so. But have you thought about if he has an idea around your thoughts around what is more important to you, vacant possession or payments of rent owed? If you think I should communicate which one is more priority, and you probably don't want to say, oh, you're ready to forfeit the whole 500,000. What do you think I can say differently to him in the next private session that will change anything? The guy will think about it that, if I keep this information to myself, I probably won't move. So he says, okay, tell him that I will give him 200,000 out of the 500,000 if he moves out end of June, right? He goes to the other room and then he probably gives the information or starts asking questions. Guess what? The landlord has said to you, son is coming in from the US with his newly wedded wife. And I don't want them to go and rent another place because they are relocating. I want them to stay in this house. Simple. You see how vacant possession now weighs higher than any money is owed? But that other guy, that's the tenant, he doesn't know. He doesn't even know why the guy is sending him out of the house in the first place. Do you see? It's the questioning that can get parties to the point where information that is relevant for a shift from positions, would happen. And I think it's the questioning skills of the mediator that can really.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. I totally agree with you there, Chinwe. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a couple of questions here. Okay, so Yvonne says, with reference to style, do you not believe that the parties and the issues determine the style? Then she also says, style is about approach. Chinwe, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I mean, her comment is very valid, right? You said Yvonne, right? I'm trying to look at it. Yeah, so yeah, I agree that style is about approach, right? And she also said, you know, the parties and issues determine the style. I agree that the parties and issues determine the style. And if we go to the landlord-tenant matter, you know, they have put their cards on the table early in the mediation. So that all that evaluation that you do for other matters, like maybe custody issues and all that, you won't really need it. All you need to do is just facilitate, you know, a settlement. It's more like, you know, towards, you know, the exploration and the negotiation and bargaining, okay? Now, if it's another case like a custody issue, where there are a lot of underlying emotional issues, what they filed in court just talks about the basic pleadings and all, and there are lots of things that you need to unpack as a mediator. You probably would go into the evaluative part where more questions and all that, you know. So I agree with Madam Yvonne that, you know, the parties and the issues determine the style, and style is about approach. There's no one case, one mold fits every case, you know. So it's about the case you have at hand and how you approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Justice Harriman says, great invaluable discourse. Thanks to Mr. Alade and company. Please keep it up. God bless you for being part of the evangelism.
Thank you, my lord.
Yeah, thank you, my lord.
Yvonne says again, the mediator should adopt the best approach that will facilitate resolve. I totally agree with that. Okay.
Abby, before you continue,
yes.
Can we just acknowledge the presence of your worship Onyekwe? She's the Director General of the Delta State Multi-Door Courthouse. Yeah, she's here with us. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, your worship. Nice to have you here. Thank you so much. Yeah. We appreciate your presence.
Thank you so much. Okay, please continue.
It's nice to see judges being part of this. It just shows you their mindset. And judges who are involved in ASCMA are the ones that can quickly, you know, look at a case and tell whether they should just dig into trial or just move. Because the fewer the cases judges have, the more efficient they will be. If a judge tells you how many cases they have in their docket to the National Judicial Council, you know, that whole conversation as to how judges should operate and whether ADR cases should be part of the cases they, you know, file for their returns. I don't know how it is now. You know, it's crazy. I mean, when people used to tell me, oh, you're going to make a good judge, I just be looking at them like this, how? How? You guys don't know what judges go through. So really, ADR also would help judges to be more efficient because they will be able to focus on cases that really need to go through litigation. So special kudos to the judges in the house.
Yeah, we're going to have we're having a special session in the not too distant future. We want to get into the minds of the judges.
The judges.
And yes, because I don't, because for me, you know what they say, you know, power corrupts and power. So I don't understand how I would have the power to take a decision and still have that mediation mindset. You know, it's a different case when you know you don't have this power, but you have this power to take a decision, take a judgment, but yet you now adopt a mediation mindset. I think it's just simply superhuman, if you ask me. Yes, it's powerful. It's powerful.
Okay. I actually totally agree with you, Fola, but I guess the judges who are, you know, who have a mediator's mindset are few and far between. And hopefully, as time goes by, we'll have more of them.
Me in Nigeria, Africa have the power. They are not having mediation. I think it's even going to be a struggle for me. Because it's a different case where you don't have the power. You don't have the power again. I mean, please don't let me.
But for that authority and power you're referring to, they also want to remain alive to execute it, because they see some cases, and you know the annoying parts.
I like
Have
that
you
word,
sat in a court where they call a case maybe from 10 years ago, and they come to report, oh my God, happy to announce that parties have settled the case after trial.
Can you just imagine? You know,
that would be frustrating.
It's amazing.
So they'll rather, no, let me know which one that I'm doing as judge. Yes, I have the power, but this power can be taken from me. If you have to settle, they're finished doing trial. You'll be listening, taking notes, everything.
In long hand.
In long hand.
Discussioning lawyers. Next, my Lord, we're happy to report to the court. Parties have now settled.
Oh, no.
Filed the settlement as for consent. That kind of judge wants to even issue costs against you for
wasting the time of the court.
I think the elephant in the room that we're still going to probably discuss in the not too distant future is the mentality of the average Nigerian, where dispute resolution is concerned, and that is
the litigants themselves, not
themselves. Yes. Yeah, I think that is one that's a fundamental discussion, because I think we are peculiar. And that is why, and our peculiarity goes down to how we even handle cases. Chances are that there might be a very, very good and excellent mediator in Nigeria, and if he has to mediate a case abroad, he might not be able to handle it well. Yes, because of some certain things that he would do abroad that might be considered unprofessional.
But those things would be, for me, I think they will be culture-centric.
Culture-centric, yes. Culture-centric, yes. Like not calling a
Let me give you an example, guys. So, and another thing, back to your very first question about embracing mediation. Another challenge we have is because of the confidentiality of mediation, we don't get to hear a lot of success stories unless the parties agree that people can share.
Oh, that's very true. That's very true.
Training, if you go through a training at Lagos Multi-Law Courthouse, you may have come across where they talk about the late former president Azikwe's case.
Azikwe's case, yes.
Azikwe,
and they settled there at the Multi-Law Courthouse, after many years, 2 decades or more. So that kind of examples, because they said, use our case as an example. But most cases are confidential, and you can't even share success stories. As mediation trainers, sometimes we just share, a few things from cases that in sharing examples that you want to share, you will not be able to figure out what kids are talking about. So this was when I was in the law firm. A very prominent Nigerian had passed on, and there was an issue around the estate with children and all that. Long story short, as counsel, you're expected to help and assist the mediator to make sure everything is fine. Your client is not the one being crazy or being, unreasonable. All I recall, what I want to mention is that during one of the sessions, these were siblings with a mother on one side, siblings one side, mother on one side. Siblings and like children with one mom, another side just one child, right? And in that mediation session, there were 2 mediators. So the case was so complex that there were 2 very senior mediators from Multi-Law Courthouse. I don't want to give much information. But in one of those sessions, tempers were rising, and the child that did not come with her mom insulted her stepmom, called her a witch or something like that. And of the mediation, remember the ground rule. Someone is okay. So the mediation this to the parties. Remember the ground rules, no use of bad language and all that. A mediator will be careful not to tell another party to apologize. What the mediator will do is just to reframe, what we call reframe, or just generally remind the parties of the ground rules, try to douse tension and move parties towards settlement without dwelling on the insult, right? So the mediator say, oh, okay, you know what? Let's calm down. Do we want to take a break? Do we want to drink some water? How about taking notes instead of interrupting conversations? And then this was me thinking, okay, but this was my client that was insulted, or the woman. So me, I felt the mediators had handled the matter. Next thing, client, who is the woman's son, says to the mediators, she has to kneel down to apologize to my mother before we can move on with this session. You know, as counsel, as a mediation advocate, there's no way I could have just told the woman, please, or the guy to say, forget about that request. It can't be done in mediation. Why? They will go back to the law firm and say, Chinwe was supporting, So this is me sitting as counsel. So I was quiet to see what the mediators would do. There was silence, right? And they're like, we already said it's not allowed. Everybody now, we've reminded everyone of the ground rules. We don't expect more insult or anything. The guy says, no, not only we should apologize, Oma Dobale. So I'm not Yoruba, but Oma Dobale is that she would kneel down to apologize. I'm telling you. So you can see that immediately told the other lady to kneel down. So what the mediators did was that they just went in that direction, as in they just faced the other lady to see her reaction. And for me, I felt that these mediators were now stuck in a cultural fix where they felt that culturally it wasn't odd for the woman to expect an apology, right? If you were in the Oba's palace, the traditional ruler, the Oba will tell you, you kneel down and apologize before we can go on. But a mediator at the multi-door courthouse could not do that, right? So silence. So the lady says, apologize for what? Making a statement of fact, aggravating. That is how was hitting everything, and everybody stood up. Noise in the multi-door courthouse, and it was like they were going to walk out. So at that point, the mediators had to call for a break. So I'm just giving that example that imagine that the mediators had turned to the other woman to say, okay, kneel down and apologize. That would have been the end of the mediation. But that matter still went on another day. There was nothing like, oh, you must apologize before you go on another. Just an example, kind of crazy things that can happen and how culture can come in and all that, So never a dull moment in mediation sometimes, especially when it's family mediation. I just thought to share that example for you to see the kind of drama we have sometimes.
I'm telling you, that's the word. That's the right phrase, drama. But that also is ego in its purest form. And I think I put it in the chat. Especially when it's family disputes. I mean, you've given a typical example of what it can be. Okay, so now back to the chat room.
But Abby, I'm just reading a few minds here, and in their minds they're telling you ego will spark. This 40-year-old woman who was insulted by someone who is like a daughter, or ego spark. You call somebody.
So that's what if the woman was actually a witch?
No, but no, Abby, under what law is the word witch recognized?
Who is even a witch? Let us even define who a witch is.
You see that for a woman to feel insulted and for her son to demand an apology.
So now, for me, demanding an apology
is misplaced in mediation. So if the guy had faced the lady to say, you owe mom an apology, that's a different thing. But to tell the mediators to command her to apologize, otherwise mediation will not go on the extreme. But honestly, if you look at it, I won't call it ego. I felt that other woman was, filling the gaps. That was too extreme, really.
Well, but that's those are the things we see as mediators, because really they and also if they had mediation advocates to guide them, it would probably not have reached that level, because the mediation advocate would have prepared your mind, would have told you what to do.
But I was a mediation advocate there, right? I did not
which part?
I was the mediation advocate for the woman who was insulted and her son who said they must apologize.
Yes. So did the other party have a mediation? Anyway, you know what, Chinwe, let's take this. So
yeah, dynamic that, you know, I think at that point in time, I wasn't very senior in the law firm. So I was also turning between, you know, clients out to say, oh, you know, do this, do that. But in that situation, right, all I did was to say to them, you know what, I just whispered to the guy, whispered to the one to say, you know what, let's be calm. Let's not get distracted from the benefits of this session. But they were visibly upset. So all I could do was say, you know what, let's really take a break, right? But I wasn't going to go ahead with the request for an apology as a written, oral, demonstrative apology of kneeling down. There was no way I was going to do that. But honestly, it was a difficult moment for me as a mediation advocate or a counsel. It was.
I can imagine. I've had something like that before. I can imagine. Okay, so comments. Back to comments. Mrs. O is right. There's a comment I missed. Okay, yeah, here we go. Mrs. O is right. There is a flow. I do not believe mediators are rigid or should be rigid in terms of style. That's Yvonne. And then there's a comment here by Oguchuku who says, wow, the power of questioning. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Team 6. Bravo, Chinwe from Ruth Egbe. Okay. Vikram has a question, but I just want to go through the comments. Yes.
Okay, I was going to say that.
There's a comment.
Yeah, for the sake of time, let's take this higher man's comment. Then we'll not take Vikram's.
Yeah. From Justice Harriman, she says, it's actually a matter of mindset. Nowadays, judges don't feel that they have lost anything when parties decide to settle just before judgment. I am of the opinion that the delay in exploring out-of-court settlement is encouraged by lawyers. We must look for a way to rationalize to lawyers that it is better to assist in negotiations and earn 200K than engage litigation over 5 years and earn 1 million, including the stress of litigation and non-assurance of winning. That is so spot on, my lord. That is so spot on. So lawyers in the house that are litigating lawyers or call litigators. I used to work in a law firm, and my boss, he would tell you proudly, I am a call litigator. My lord, I will refer them. I will munch this, and I'll probably do a write-up on this. My lord, thank you so much for this. Because of time, we're not going to be able to take all the comments. Vikram has a question. Vikram, can you please unmute? And let's be time conscious, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Mrs. O, it was a pleasure listening to you. Basically, I want to talk to you about private mediation. Hi. Is private mediation developing in Nigeria, and are these multi-door courthouses an impediment to development of private mediation because the parties connect court and almost free mediation together? Are we going to have an issue developing private mediation in Nigeria? And what is it? What is the status right now, according to you?
Yeah, private mediation. For last favorite topic, I think one of his favorite topics. So private mediation in Nigeria. So I don't have the statistics, but I'm not sure that private mediation is thriving in Nigeria just yet. I know a few mediators who are branding themselves in a way that people can approach them. So like you said, Lagos Settlement Week is free mediation, okay? You go to the Citizens Mediation Center at Alausa and different, locations in Lagos State. It's free mediation, So mediation is such that part of the strategy in Nigeria to get people to embrace mediation is to make it free or low cost, right? When I went for my mediation advocacy training with Professor Andrew Goodman. We went to the UK. Now, we met some UK mediators that were talking about the thousands of pounds they charge per hour for mediation. And those of us on the faculty are like, really? Comparing to how much we get paid for mediating cases. And you could see that it's a cultural thing, it's a Nigerian thing. Right now, private mediation practice is something that a mediator will struggle to build now, right? So you would have people say, oh, I'm a mediator. You can walk into my office and we can do a mediation session, right? Now, the reason people would embrace institutional mediation more than private mediation is the thing around neutrality, right? If it's a multi-door courthouse that writes to you to say, Mr. A walked in with this case for mediation, please come to the multi-door case manager and see if you are amenable to litigation, it's easier. But if Mr. Fola Alade writes to me to say Mr. Vikram came to me with a case regarding a contract you have with him and says that in that contract, there's a clause that says parties should explore mediation. Mr. Vikram will want me to be appointed the mediator to handle this case. Can you please, respond or come to my office for a meeting? Automatically in my head, I'm saying, how did Mr. Vikram even choose Mr. Fola Alade? Even if he's a fantastic mediator and well-known, he must be his father's, cousin's, uncle's, neighbor's child. There must be a connection, and therefore, this Mr. Fola might just be biased. So you see, there's a difficulty in that. But if they have counsel, maybe lawyers, right, or mediation advocates, where, okay, they've tried negotiation, it did not work, and both parties have agreed, you know what, let's go to mediation. And they jointly say, okay, let's look at this list of mediators at the Lagos Court of Arbitration or at the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse, and let's choose Mr. Fola jointly. Then it's fine. Everybody goes to Mr. Fola and everybody is okay that we both chose the mediator. So I think that private practice has not reached that point in Nigeria where it can be seen as neutrality. There's a neutral platform. I know that there's some mediators that parties that approach privately because of the maybe sensitivity of the cases or the value involved, and we never get to hear of these things, right? Because nobody publicizes them. But at least we know some of those top mediators who actually mediate cases earn their money in millions, and they keep quiet because they can't really say much about it, So Vikram, I hope I've answered your question. It is still growing, it's still growing. So like Fola talks about branding, building a mediation practice, branding yourself as a mediator or mediation advocate and all that. And I think that in about maybe how many years from now, maybe 5 to 10 years from now, I would answer this question. So that's what it is. The free mediation services we have will not last forever. One day, Lagos State government will say, okay, our budget for ADR has we've exhausted it. Everybody go and pay,
Yeah.
So
I quite agree with you, Ms. O, but I mean, just add a sentence to what you've just said so far. Yeah. Practically, when you look at private mediation practice, as a mediation advocate, it's easier to have a more thriving mediation practice than as a mediator. That is just what I'll add to it. Yes, sure. And that is why, that's why I always advise people coming into the business and the practice of mediation to have 3 caps. The first as a mediator, the second as a mediation advocate, and the third as a trainer. I like to call it the MAT. So that way you are going to strategically position yourself. If through your branding and marketing, people get to know you very well, yes, then they can recommend you as a mediator. And that is where the issue of branding and marketing comes into play. Now, as an advocate, if people come to meet you, it's easier for you to tell them, you know what, I hear you. We can make use of an institution like the LMDC and all that to file your case with me representing you as a mediation advocate. It's an easier sell. It's easier to convince your client. It's also easier to drag the other party to that institution to come and mediate, which takes away the element of bias. And of course, both of them naturally flow into the third one. Because if you're a mediator and an advocate, you are constantly talking about mediation. So you are training. So I think the third one just comes into play. Because when you're explaining the benefits of mediation to people and all of that, it more or less just makes you a trainer. But you raised the question, a point that I want to ask a question on. And that will probably be my last question before we take one other one from, before we take the second last one. And it's this, when you look at the concept of neutrality, Mrs. O, as a human being, can a human being truly be neutral? Before we now look at the concept of a mediator being neutral. Because you see, it's funny when we talk about neutrality and they say a mediator has to be neutral. Now, let's be honest, this is one question. Even those of us that have kids, we know that there's that particular child that, you just try to be very objective. You try to say you love all your children equally, but there's always that one that you just know that holds your switch. So when you now put the burden of neutrality on a human being, when a human being cannot even maintain neutrality, don't you think it's like a misnomer to say that a mediator must be neutral? Can a human being be neutral? I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
So my answer, a human being can be seen to be neutral.
Semantics.
I'm speaking for myself. I'll give you an example.
Okay. You sound like a true lawyer.
No. To be seen. See, how do you define neutrality? My words, my actions, my facial expressions, the questions I ask, right? Not my head or my mind, because you cannot read my mind. So growing up, sanguine, extrovert, then even when I got to the BNI, I remember my first year in BNI, I'm in meetings, someone is saying something I don't agree with, my face changes, and maybe Mr. Glenn will say, Chinwe, do you have something to say? I'll say, no. So you have something to say. Why? My face will face. I'm in a mediation session, especially when I'm doing assessment and training. So this smiley Chinwe you see, if I'm doing an assessment, I'm following you to what you cannot tell whether you're doing well or not. I'm just scoring you. That is a training I've given myself as a mediator, where parties cannot tell what's on my mind.
Okay,
somehow I'm a human lie detector. I can tell when somebody is lying, right? You're in a private meeting. Example, my early days as a mediator. My God, someone had a shop, rented a shop from someone who owned a shop. An elderly woman refused to pay for 2 years. The woman says, pack out of the shop. She says, she's still trying to. In private meeting, I said to her, okay, so just tell me what's going on. Just tell me, just through questions, she started talking. And she says to me that this woman is very rich. This is not her only shop. She has many shops. So I said, oh, do you sell things? I said, yeah, I sell. I'm selling things. In my head, I'm screaming, you fraudulent person, you thief. Do you understand? But my face is normal, and I'm struggling because I'm saying, oh my God, this is wickedness, right? It's wickedness. So what did I do? I just used questioning to get her to, in mediation, there's something called reality testing. You cannot make a party feel guilty or feel condemned, but you can use reality testing and questioning to get to the person to a point of some kind of moral mindset where the person realizes that, okay, I'm being unfair, right? Just a few questions, and she started saying, I'm not a bad person, no. I'm not saying, I didn't even say anything to her, but you could tell that it just a few questions around, oh, wow. So do you know how many children she has? Do you know if she's dealing with anything in terms of the other shops? Do you know whether she's really the owner and she's collecting people, whether she's having just questions here and there to see if what she said was factual or just an assumption. Then she realizes that, oh, she has shown herself, and imagine that maybe she now has to try and rebrand herself before the mediator. So in trying to show that she's a good person, she goes to the joint session and said, the woman, ma, please don't be angry. It's not that I don't want to pay you. I've been having problems and blah, blah, blah. But in my head, I'm saying this lady is wicked, though. Do you get? But it didn't show on my face. I did not tell her you are mean. I did not go to the other party and say, this woman knows she's owing, she doesn't want to pay, she has no plans to pay you. Was I neutral in my approach to mediation? I was neutral for that, believe me. Nobody would have known what was going in my head. But was I neutral in my head? Of course not. I felt that this lady. So neutrality in mediation is not asking you to be one superhuman, where in your head everybody is okay and you're just a blind person listening to two sides that you cannot tell. No, the human way of processing information is for you to tell, this person is not negotiating in goodwill, with goodwill. This person is the weaker party. This person is manipulative. It's back to questioning skills. You are not trying to tilt to make a case for the other person. You are just trying to see whether you can facilitate a resolution. And there are some cases that when you get there, you're like, it's not likely that people can settle, but you will not be the ones to tell them you're not likely to settle because someone is holding on to position. The parties will get to that conclusion themselves. And that's why they teach us when they're training us that don't feel guilty if at the end you cannot settle a case. You do your best, but do not take responsibility for the party's inability to settle. So neutrality for La is to be neutral. That is Chinwe's own answer. It is not written in any manual, but that's the way I've seen experience.
Yeah,
in my head, not be neutral, but I will do what I need to do for parties to keep believing that I am neutral and impartial. And neutrality and impartiality is just saying, I am not for anyone. So like the politician will say, I am for everybody and for nobody. I am not for anybody. I'm not here. I'm not interested in anybody's case. But in my head, are there some moral conversations going on? There are, but I am still neutral. I'm still not going to make a case for the poor old woman who has a wicked tenant. I'm still neutral. I'm not her advocate.
Okay.
So that's the answer.
Yeah, thank you so much. I get where you're coming from. I also think by way of expanding this narrative before I ask the final question, that the issue of neutrality also ties down the personality of people. For someone like me, I'm a better mediation advocate where issues of family matters are concerned. But when it comes to family matters as a mediator, it's very, very difficult to maintain neutrality. So I don't know how that ties down to the mentality of mediators, where as an area of specialization, you can maintain neutrality on some areas, you can't maintain neutralities on some areas. Because I like to compartmentalize a lot, I'm able to maintain neutrality for corporate commercial. When it comes to family matters, it's always a difficult one to do. So I don't know whether that also helps in mediators choosing an area of specialization, knowing the areas they can maintain neutrality on, or is just a general trait that mediators must have to be seen as being neutral. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, so for you're very right. So and I'm not calling rules of professional conduct. Rules of ethics as mediators. One is don't take a case you think you will not be neutral to handle. Second is, if in the course of mediating a case, you find that your neutrality cannot be maintained, recuse yourself from the case, right? In that case, that I gave an example, it didn't affect my neutrality or ability to continue the conversation as if nothing was there. It was just some alarm bells ringing in my head, and I just switched back to just focus on the case, right? Now, I believe in specialization, right? Because yes, our training helps us to be able to handle almost any type of case, but your own personality, your own personal values, your technical competence will tell you what kind of cases to do. So I'm a core commercial lawyer, FMC, a little bit of oil and gas, intellectual property and all that. Those are the kind of areas I would do. Now, family mediation, I would love to, because I recently became, a counselor, right? I did a training on being a counselor and everything, and I have interest in that, right? So I think I have the compassion or the heart to handle a family matter. But when it comes to things around maybe sexual harassment, child molestation, and all that, or human rights abuse where maybe somebody has been battered and all that. Especially when there's a criminal angle to it that is being dealt with by the police, and then you just want to mediate maybe like a compensation. I will not take those kind of cases on, because I will not go and cry in a session, or I'm not going to start preaching or reprimanding in a session, and you're allowed to refuse a case. So there's some cases if I see, I will beg not to. My emotions will get in the way. There's nobody that will say, oh, I can handle anything, I'm not emotional, I'm an expert. Really, there's everybody has their own touch points. You have your breaking points, and you must be self-aware of what you can handle and what you cannot handle, you know. So there's some cases I won't be able to handle personally, by choice, you know, and that's what is required of us as mediators. You know, if you know neutrality will be a okay, there'll be someone that has the kind of strength to handle these things, and they'll hand the case to the person.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. O. So 2 final questions, very brief answers so that we can just call it a day. First one is this: what makes one a good mediator, in your words, in your opinion? And then what final words do you have for people who want to tow your path as a mediator, an arbitrator, a facilitator, and a trainer?
Please allow me to hail Mrs. Kolade.
Oh, okay. That's another personal favorite of mine. Yes.
So Mrs. Kolade is one of the first set of facilitators that trained me in 2004, 2005, 2006, and she's been very encouraging in the course of my career. Fantastic woman. Good to see you, Mrs. Kolade. I can't see her here, but I can see her comments.
Comments, yes.
She's part of those that started the multi-law courthouse with Mr. Kenya, so fantastic woman. Good to see you, ma. And her comment is that in addition to that you do not hand down a judgment, your neutrality should not be compromised. Exactly, because your role is not to choose any side, then your neutrality should not be compromised. Right, ma. So what advice do I give to people that want to build a career in mediation, right?
Yes, please.
So I would say that the beauty,
thank you.
There's a school of thought that says non-lawyer mediators are better mediators. So my friends are here. I think Ruth Egwe will be here. She's not a lawyer, she's an engineer turned a HR expert. She's a mediator. She's trained at Lagos Multi-Law Courthouse. I have another friend, Casey, but she's not a lawyer. They've trained and good mediators. So the advice is mediation is a great career to build. So it's not about money. Sometimes you just want to give back. You just want to be part of the peace in the world. Let me put it that way. Where there's some high that comes with settling a case. When you settle a case and you're like, wow, I'm the reason these people came in fighting and now they're smiling. Or I'm part of the reason, it's great. So to train, I would say, do the mediation advocacy training first, then do the mediation skills training, become a mediator, do some mentoring, okay, go under a mentor, do some co-mediation and all that, and then build a career in mediation. It should not be a money-targeted venture. Because if you're in the UK, maybe, or in Canada or somewhere else, oh, wow, you train, you have to build your profile, and you start earning a lot. But I think the benefits of mediation or being a mediator are still loading, let me put it that way. And in the future, mediators will be the ones cashing out. Mediators are mediation advocates. So the advice is, no matter how old you are, humble yourself. Humble yourself. You can learn from anyone, right? Just come in with an open mind. Try and disabuse your mind of what you know about mediation. It's a fantastic skill to have. Mediation skills are fantastic skills, right? I work in a company. I don't remember when last I actually did a proper mediation, apart from the usual, just calling people together, maybe at work or something to try and resolve. I still train. I take my vacation days when there's an opportunity to train, because that's how I keep current and all that, you know, and I love to teach, right? But just the skills I learned in mediation, let me give you an example. Questioning skills. Practicing questioning skills just helps me to have a conversation. So I'm in a meeting or I'm negotiating something. I find that what I learned as a mediator, as a mediation advocate, and what I've practiced has helped me in negotiating. Okay. Another thing is listening. There's something in mediation, we call it active listening. When you are an extrovert, right? There's a tendency, you come in somewhere and then you just now becoming a mediator as early as I did in my career, helped me to learn and practice active listening. So you're in a meeting, you're not just listening to answer, you are actually listening. And active listening involves silence, body language, posture, right? And maybe a few questions in between. The questions you ask when someone is speaking, and it's clear to them that you were listening to them in the first place. So it just helps you to have more productive discussions. It helps you to do better stakeholder management, which is required for every kind of work that you do, and even in family and everything, So I think the benefits of training as a mediator go beyond the opportunity to actually mediate or settle cases. It's much more than that. And so if anyone wants to train, I would first of all say, you should have a budget. Okay, I'm pending that. There are some free online courses. I remember that after that law school one that I did, I went online and I did some foundation ADR course, a free, I don't even remember, was it United? Was it UNITA? I can't remember, to be honest. I can't even find the certificate. So I just did an online course. I think it was like a total of 6 hours. So I'll just take 30 minutes break here and there, and I did the course. There are some free courses online, right? Those courses will give you the foundation knowledge that you have. But the actual training where you can actually do the role plays, you can ask questions, and you can do an assessment, will take you there. But just start with the online training, start by attending these kind of sessions, start by even, follow me and all that, and ABI mediates. There are quite a number of things that are going on, really. So just join those sessions, start with the free ones, and then get bold enough to start spending money. If I talk about how much I've spent on trainings, it's a lot, but I mean, no regrets, because no one can take away what I've learned from those trainings. Okay, so that's it.
Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, no, because Mrs. O is you now. It's you. When you talk, we listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so very much. As always, it's been an interesting, insightful, and educative session. We've learned quite a lot from you, and we've been able to get into the essence of why you do what you do. We don't take any of this for granted. And I also want to thank everyone that has tuned in, my mentors, my guys at the top here. Thank you all very much. So next week, we'll be having another powerful trainer in the person of Miss Uzo Gazi. She'll be on the hot seat next week, and upper week we'll be having Mrs. Nene Etuk. Like I said, this month is all about trainers, getting into the mindset of the trainers of mediation to know why they do what they do. So please tune in, 5 p.m. prime time, same link. And for those that tuned in late, you can please search for us on YouTube, Fortify Mediation Academy, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter by VPN. And yes, and just click and subscribe and follow.
Please do not
Twitter by VPN.
Okay.
Yes.
By VPN, nice one.
Yeah, thank you all for following us, and we look forward, to having you again next week, Saturday, 5 p.m. prime time. And have a lovely weekend. God bless you, everyone.
Thank you, Fola. Thank you, Abby. And all the comments. Thank you, everyone, for the comments. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
all right,
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all so much.
And I'm
so sorry we couldn't take all the comments in the section. We're constrained for time. Goodbye, everyone.